is that oftentimes the success of a project requires you to deal with people who don't report to you at all, like your company, right? So how do you motivate your partner to work with you when you have no control over what they do? And so that needs to be dealt with as well. And I think also just being realistic about the transaction. I have a great story from Procter & Gamble. They created something called Connect and Develop, their open innovation group. And their group got so good at negotiating deals that at the time, Jeff Weedman, who was leading the group, had to actually undo a number of transactions because they negotiated such a good deal for Procter & Gamble. Their partner that they were licensing the technology to wasn't incentivized to actually take the technology out. They didn't leave enough incentive for the partner. So you have to be careful to make sure there's enough value in the deal for your partner too. You both have to feel pain. Nobody should feel they won, right? So if you're shared pain, you did a good job. If you know you nailed the other side, it's not going to work. So again, let's talk about what does it mean to be a good partner. It doesn't mean to always win. And then the last thing, I think, just to wrap it up, is in a lot of instances, you need to know what you don't know, whether you're the buyer or the seller, and that's to get expertise when you need it. It may be technical help, it could be transaction help, it could be relationship, it could be any number of things, but the odds of successful transactions go down if you think you can do it all yourself. So again, I think it's just trying to understand what you don't know and to bolster that in whatever way is possible. I think that's all I have.
Yeah, thank you, Susan. This is very inspiring. And I would like to say I couldn't agree with you more, because it's basically some of the facts you were mentioned are basically what we're dealing every day. And sometimes we just don't know what we don't know. That's true, right? Okay. So let's welcome Dr. Gordon McConaughey.
Sure. How do I advance this machine?
Just press this one.
That one. Thank you. That's all I need to know. Okay. Good afternoon. I'd like to change gear a little bit, and I'd like to give a very light touch on what it feels like to be somebody in the company looking for new technologies or perhaps placing it. And I'm basing it on the work I did when I worked in Dow Chemical for the last 10 of the 25 years I worked there. So obviously that went the wrong way. No. What am I?
Give them 1 second. Just
Let them get the right presentation back. What am I doing wrong here?
There it is. There. All right.
Okay, thank you. So the topic is transferring technologies from the US into China or the other way. And there are really three things that I would say here. The first thing is, as has been said by so many people today, it's a question of developing understanding. Understanding of what you want, understanding of the person or group you're talking to, understanding of the fact that that person will think in a different way from you, and making allowances for that. It therefore leads to the need to enhance cooperation so that both of you can come away from this deal with something in your hand and in your pocket. And in the end, it's creating a partnership. And I promise you, when I put this together, I did not know that one of the speakers today would talk about the excellent railway system in China. But I can tell you for a fact it is, because I've been sitting on those trains a lot. Now let me see if I can get the thing to work this time. Could you move them for me? It's got a delay on it. I'm too quick. What are the personal lessons I've learned from the things I've done in bringing technologies from very strange parts of the world into Dow Chemical in my past life? The most important activity of all is to make the connection, to build the trust with the other partner. When you decide there's something you want, you have to build the trust. And often you're building the trust before you can mine what these people have got. The second thing is that the first deal often breaks the ice and leads to conversations that might find other deals. And I'm talking here of company to company more than using a huge database, because this is a personal contact activity. And finally, let's not be blindsided by the fact that this is only for high-tech companies. Technology transfer can work for any industry. Even an industry like the production of cement has got a niche sector. And you can find wonderful things in the most mundane industries if you only look. What you see on the right is a graph that shows how activities into the United States have changed and how China's participation in the US market has grown at a time when Mexico's participation has actually shrunk. The world changes all the time, and it will change again. So, very, very quickly, the context of USA and China. Here we're talking about the two largest economies in the world. This means that the opportunities are endless. So there's a lot of low-hanging fruit that people can work on. China has many initiatives, the One Belt, One Road, the idea of getting the old Silk Road remotivated both as a road and as a maritime passageway to trade with Europe is current. The concept of Industry 4.0, where you aggregate together all the elements of the knowledge economy and make them efficient, is something China is working on today with Germany. And for the future, the concept of Made in China 2025, what is it going to look like in 10 years' time? These things should make everybody excited to get things moving. And if you look on the right, there's another train there, the Maglev, now running in Shanghai between Pudong Airport and the outskirts of the city. And that is an example of German technology brought into China, optimized, put in place. And that one's going to be very interesting because Japan have just announced they're going to build their own one. So this is going to bring competition to the market, and we'll see what happens. So if you're transferring technology and IP, what are the things that are important in here? As we have heard from several people already today, before you begin, planning is the most important thing. If you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. So you need to have a plan as to what you want. Let's say you're going to buy something. This has to be something that's going to be beneficial for the donor and the recipient. You need to do your homework before you start. That's something we learned by making mistakes at the beginning in Dow. You need, as Suzanne said, competent people in the business of all the steps in the process. You may, if you're not a huge corporation, need a skilled intermediate. You certainly will need one. And you have to create the relationships. And eventually, since I'm thinking of China and the USA, you have two large elephants who shake their trunk and say, we've made a deal. We have a little problem. And again, people have talked about this today. The whole area of IP and technology transfer in this world is absolutely fragmented. There are so many active players in the market. Does anyone have an overview? I don't think so. That means you have to have a lot of sources, a lot of networks. Again, the number of cooperations between intermediaries becomes more and more important. And I put a few of those down there. The European Enterprise Network is, for me, a very interesting concept because that's from the European Union, funded by government, free at the point of service to small companies. It's a combination of a technology transfer activity and a business support service. And it's not only in the European Union. There are about 6 node points in the United States. There are about 5 in China. Many countries in the world have a node. It's one of the networks. The other one I put up there, and I'm just choosing a few at random, Yet2.com was created by the larger corporations in the US to transact their technologies, monetize their IP. And I would not say it's been a huge success. It certainly hasn't been a failure, but it's from large corporations focused on DuPont, and it is finding it hard to do things. It works basically as a small group in the middle with a tremendous number of associates. You have organizations like the Association of University Technology Managers, you have the global organization Licensing Executive Society, you have organizations like WTOIP. You are all different types of service organizations, aggregators, and so on. There are some issues when you talk about China and the USA. And we need to be aware of these issues so that we can simply accept them and deal with them. The first one is the question of language and culture. We are different. I'm different too, because I'm a European. We have to understand people are different and make allowances for that. Through understanding, if we understand, you can make success. There are going to be some things which are questions of national security. I know for a fact because I was involved in the privatization of part of the UK's national defence activities into a private company, Kinetic. And I know that the UK government had to discuss certain of the UK's security assets with the US government because there was a common defence interest. So we simply accept there will be certain subjects which are taboo. They will not be transacted. Okay, the issue of building trust is not only for USA and China, it's for any organization. I had it between Germany and Spain. Making a deal requires knowledge and expertise. I can't say that often enough. Finding it needs that too. And I have two quotes which sort of sink in my mind. The first one is from a US author. You can spend your life judging people, or you can spend your life making friends. Up to you to choose which one you follow. I know which one I choose. And secondly, a quote from Gandhi, who, in a very peaceful way, helped bring about the transition of India out of the British Empire. And one of the most important things he said is, you must be the change you wish to make in this world. Be active. My personal experience is very strange because I translated a lot of technologies out of the Soviet Union and Eastern Germany into a US corporation, Dow Chemical. Where do you think the trust issue was? The trust issue were the Russians and the East Germans who were afraid of the big US giant. It wasn't the US company that was afraid of them. In the end of the day, we transacted a number of very useful technologies at a time when the Soviet Union was crumbling under its own feet. The satellites were falling apart. The people we worked with got very necessary finance, and the relationships continued for many, many years. I don't remember one instance where one party took advantage of the other. We had a very good secret weapon in Russia. A man called Ari Cohen, who's a Russian national, Russian-born person, emigrated to the USA, US passport holder. He could walk back into Russian universities and talk to his colleagues like he'd never left. A scientist. So basically it's win-win. We're almost at the end. Another thing I should point out is there's a very clever